morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. There is a ton of stuff going on in the news. Yesterday, we found out that leftist Judge Melisa Owens in Teton County finally struck down Wyoming's 2 abortion bans. I don't really think that this has been a big shock to anybody. Of course, we were all hopeful that Melisa Owens could read the plain letter of the law and decide that abortion, that is, the taking of another life, cannot possibly be health care. But in another exercise of the left taking their marching orders from national trends, Melisa Owens decided to be an activist judge and write law out of whole cloth from her bench. Her order unilaterally declares that abortion is health care and is therefore covered by Article 1, Section 38 of the Wyoming Constitution, which says, and I quote, "Each competent adult shall have the right to make his or her own health care decisions. The parent, guardian, or legal representative of any other natural person shall have the right to make health care decisions for that person." End quote. The flaw in Judge Owens' reasoning, if you can even call her assumptions that, but the step that she missed, or intentionally disregarded, is that when you become pregnant, it's no longer just your body that you're concerned with. Oh, I get it. The unborn child is inside its mother's womb. And by the way, you should underline and put an asterisk by that phrase, unborn child. I'll get to that in just a second. Yes, it's true that the unborn child is inside its mother's womb. But that doesn't mean that it's not another life, and it certainly doesn't mean that it's not a child. Now, I suppose that you could attempt being the operative word, to debate the intricacies of biology. But in the end, you'd have to come to the conclusion that indeed a pregnant woman is dealing with 2 lives, not just her own. That is a biologic fact. And if you don't believe me, let me just give you a little logic to go along with it. 2 questions then. First, is it possible for something to be created out of nothing? Nope, that is not a thing. And my second question, at any point in your life, were you ever a fish or a giraffe or a rhinoceros? Wait, strike that rhinoceros part. There are lots of rhinos running around the Wyoming legislature. My point is that at no time in your entire life were you a member of another species. It is impossible to change species. And since we know that every single human being walking the face of the earth was born from a mother, we must assume that the unborn child a mother carries is indeed a human life. So not only is Melisa Owens off her rocker when it comes to biology, she also is evidently ignorant of Wyoming law. Allow me to direct your attention to Wyoming Statute 61101D. And I quote, "A person is guilty of murder in the first degree of an unborn child, punishable as provided for other convictions of murder in the first degree if, Romanet number 1, the person purposefully and with premeditated malice, or in the penetration of, or in the attempt to penetrate any sexual assault, sexual abuse of a minor, arson, robbery, burglary, escape, resisting arrest, kidnapping, or abuse of a child under the age of 16 years, kills or attempts to kill any human being, Romanet number 2, the human being was pregnant with an unborn child, and Romanet number 3, and this is the big one, my friends, the unborn child dies as the result of a person's actions." End quote. It seems to me that intentionally aborting or killing a baby clearly constitutes a violation of Wyoming Statute 62101, subparagraph D, Romanet number 3. In other words, abortion clearly qualifies as premeditated murder of an unborn child in the state of Wyoming. an offense which definitely could get you the death penalty. But there again, what do I know? I'm not a district court judge, my name isn't Melisa Owens, and I'm not an attorney, but I can definitely read. Unlike, apparently, Melisa Owens. I've put a link to Title VI of the Wyoming statutes at cowboystatepolitics.com. Look at page 14. You can make up your own mind whether abortion, that is, killing a baby, qualifies as premeditated murder. Moving on. I mentioned in Monday's episode that the caucus vote was to be held today. That was incorrect. The vote is going to take place on Saturday. So we'll all have to wait until the end of the week to find out if conservatives are going to be in charge of the Wyoming Senate or if some so-called conservatives struck a deal with Slithers. You'll know when I know on that one. For today's program, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I reached out to my pals at Freedom Gold USA to have a discussion with Paul Cox about the economy. Right after Trump's re-election, the stock market shot into the stratosphere. That day, it ended up being something like 1,200 points up. I wanted to find out why, and Paul Cox is a pretty good guy to talk to about that. Here is my discussion with him. I'd like to welcome back to the program Paul from Freedom Gold USA. How's it going, Paul?
Great, man. Great. Good to be back.
Welcome back. What do you think of the election?
Phenomenal. I mean, I saw it coming the whole time. I know many people that it's a shock to them, but it was, listen, last 4 years were just brutal.
Crap is what I would call it.
And I have a pretty mature BS meter. The whole, late to the game nominee that was challenging the challenger. If that had manifested, I think I'd commit myself.
Well, I think it would probably have been the end of the Republic in one way or another. Living out here, of course, Wyoming went for Trump 74, 75%. Now, there was really never a question here, but personally, I was cautiously optimistic. I really had a feeling we were looking at Ronald Reagan territory as far as the Electoral College. So I was cautiously optimistic, I would say. So, Paul, with Trump winning, we know that the economy is going to go in a different direction. He's going to have a lot of different policies. What do you expect is going to happen to the price of gold? I mean, I certainly is not going to continue to go up.
It's interesting that you say that. I've been in this business a long time, 25 plus years. And that is absolutely short-sighted. Okay. And I'll tell you why. The near-term gold going down is absolutely due to, some irrational exuberance that he's going to magically change everything that has manifested over the past 4 years. It's not that easy. First of all, he's inheriting a nightmare debt load due to the irresponsible policies by the Federal Reserve. There are some great economic reasons why gold will be held back. But in my opinion, there's many, many more bad economic reasons that will push gold forward. And it's pretty common sense. And, so we can talk about it here.
The reason why I asked, Paul, is that if you look at the price of fuel, okay, so for a really long, you live in California, so it's probably like $20 a gallon there, but the rest of the country has been living with between $3 and $4 for the past 4 years. A Republican gets elected, and you can bet there's going to be more drilling, more extraction of coal, natural gas, those sorts of things. And so in the pretty short term, you see the price of gas go up, but that's the price of fuel is pretty volatile, or the price of oil rather. And I was wondering if you could explain how gold reacts to different political events like a presidential election. What do we see in the price of gold?
Okay, well, what we're seeing now, the gold going down, nothing has changed since he's been elected. It's the psychology, right? It's this irrational exuberance that there's going to be an answer to, all the problems will be answered. So what's happened is you see this bolstered stock market, right? So cash flew out of the DXY into the stock market, pushing it up. And, a certain amount of exuberance that things are going to be resolved has led to somewhat of many people on the sidelines that were kind of like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I should keep the cash. So that's pushing down gold in the near term. That coupling happens quite often, where the stock market goes up and gold goes down. There are many times where the stock market goes up and gold goes up as well. It used to be, when I first got into this market, that you always watched crude. That would have been the telltale signal of gold going up or down. It's no more. It's a currency controlled move these days. Now, I'll see if I can get around to what you were asking. The good news for gold buyers that are still on the sidelines, that gold may go down a little bit more because of this exuberance, right? But the bad news for gold buyers, they're on the sidelines and thinking like, oh, everything's great. I don't, forget about gold, is that there's going to be a return to inflation. And most likely because of the global economic and financial turbulence that the policies that he's proposing will cause. The global economic instability is really the thing we have to look out for. The last 20 years, the G8, the dollar's interwoven throughout the world, so you can't, it's never like what's bad for the US is only bad for the US. Or what's bad for China is only bad for China. No, we're all connected in this kind of symbiotic, we're like a bad family, right? We are somewhat dependent on the kindness of strangers to continue to purchase our bonds. On the campaign trail, he's proposed three broad policy areas. And, if kept, I believe, and many others believe that, and this is still pro-Trump. This is nothing. He's inheriting a nightmare. Do I think that we're going to come out on the other end positively? Yes, but it's going to take some time. He promised to make a slew of very large tax cuts. Okay. Number two, he's committing to in the major way to import tariffs. And then three, there's this to deport more than 10 million undocumented immigrants. Okay, just those three of his proposals and where that's going to leave us. Okay, so first of all, on the tax front, Trump promised to extend the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which would reduce the corporate tax rate to 21% from 21% to 15%, and eliminate taxes on Social Security benefits. Okay. According to the Committee for the Responsible Budget, I can't remember what that committee is called, but
the new one.
Yeah. Over the next decade, they're saying that tax cuts could add a staggering $7.75 trillion to the already burgeoning national debt. Okay, that's what they're saying. The inflationary risks of this kind of a tax program are significant. We're headed with the debt we have to like 120% of GDP, which is, from all means and purposes, if you look at the big names, are saying that would collapse the dollar. His proposed tax cuts, if unmitigated, and I'm just talking purely from the point of view of where we stand, that could jump to 140%. Needless to say, it's all comes back to this mess that he's inheriting.
Right. So let me see if I got this right. I mean, that Trump really hasn't done anything right now except get elected, and he really hasn't even taken office yet.
Right.
And you've got this big, giant, huge national debt. It's been a couple days since I looked at the numbers, but I mean, it's definitely over $35 trillion. And he hasn't done anything with that yet. And the reason why, people might be, and big time investors for sure, look at gold is it's a safe haven, right? It's never been worth zero. It's one of those things where when the economy is unstable, people look at gold and say, okay, that's where I'm going to put my money because bonds really not that great of ideas. And when the dollar becomes really unstable, then like, well, I guess we'll buy gold. And so, if I understand you correctly, that until there's actually some substantive changes, you're really not going to see that much of a vast improvement in the economy. Some superficial stuff, sure, but like the underlying, the underpinnings of the economy really won't change until there's some big time movement in either the national debt or income or taxes or any of that. So really where we're at is the same place we were 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and it's not an easy fix, and you have to look at what's going on in the world market. The world market, no one relatively is speaking is buying our bonds. It's the Fed who is buying our bonds. This is a problem. The past 4 years, the federal government has weaponized the dollar. Where they took all of Russia's money, and withheld it because of their dalliance with this, Ukraine war. The rest of the countries around the world that are holding these large position in dollars are saying, "Hey, they're afraid. They don't want their assets devalued like that." I think the number one thing to be on the watch out for is the tariffs. The tariffs he's proposing like 60% tariff on all goods coming from China. He's also proposing 10 to 20% tariff on imports from all of America's trade partners. Now, what does this mean? You remember the beggar thy neighbor policies of the 1930s, where, you're basically begging your partners, they just accept these because, this is what's needed. Whereas Germany is like the third largest economy in the world, right? Isn't it? It's China and then Germany, if I'm correct. This will massively disrupt those economies, massively disrupt them. I love what Trump is proposing and bringing back manufacturing here, but this is going to take time. I firmly believe that we're on the right track, but for people to think that this is an easy fix, it's a mistake. And really what's at risk is the value of the dollar.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You've mentioned that a couple of times, and let's see if we can drill down on that, because I don't think that most people really understand where we're at. I mean, it's always been king dollar everywhere, and you can go travel to any other country, and if you have a pocket full of dollars, you're in pretty good shape. And it's always been the preeminent currency. But there are some moves being made by other countries, and definitely in response to some very, very irresponsible policies that the United States has enacted. So can you just quickly explain to me where we're at with the dollar and really what that means in real terms?
We'll get Paul's answer in just a second. But first, an absolutely egregious profit timeout. Cowboy State Politics is brought to you by Morton Buildings. It doesn't really matter what type of building you've been thinking about for your property, whether it's a barn or a garage or maybe something bigger like a roping arena or a big gigantic warehouse for your business. The two guys you need to talk to are Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They are the experts in metal building construction. They've been doing it longer than anybody else around, and they definitely do a much better job than anybody else. Fact is, if you drive by one, you can definitely tell that there's a big difference in quality. One cool thing they do is pour concrete pillars, and then they insert a steel I-beam inside them, and then pour the foundation on top. That way, there is no way that water is going to get underneath your building and ruin the foundation. So whatever building you're thinking about, give Nick and Jesse a call. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. Today's program is also brought to you by the Wyoming Cartridge Company. They're a Wyoming-based ammunition manufacturer that's headquartered right here in Sheridan, Wyoming. They make ammunition that is designed to make you a better shooter. I've burned through several boxes of Wyoming Cartridge Company ammunition, and I can tell you for a fact that it holds its pattern just as tight as any other ammunition that you would buy off the shelf. Whether you are going to the range or you're headed up the hill to go bag a big gigantic elk, pick up a box of Wyoming Cartridge Company ammunition. Have you winterized your camper yet? Well, if you haven't, you're probably in for it. The people you need to call right away are Tim and Tammy Young at Young's Camper Repair. Their phone number is 307-431-8110. One more time, that's 307-431-8110. Right now, they've got a special going on for campers 17 feet or less. They'll winterize the whole thing, which includes 2 gallons of antifreeze for $65. For campers that are larger than 17 feet, it'll be $100, which still includes that 2 gallons of antifreeze. So if you haven't done it already, give Tim and Tammy Young. Their phone number, one more time, is 307-431-8110. And now, back to today's program.
Okay, well, first of all, in 1974, we entered into what's now known as the Doomsday Deal with Saudi Arabia. We agreed to give them military might and protection in exchange for that all countries around the world, if they were going to buy crude, they would have to convert to the dollar to buy it. Okay, now think about Saudi Arabia and the neighboring countries. These are medieval cultures, some of them. Do you think that Saudi Arabia would have been able to experience the largesse that they have without any attacks or any kind of issues of others wanting a piece of that pie? No, it was because of the United States. Okay, so from that point on, the dollar really took off as the reserve currency of the world. You had to convert to the dollar, so hence every country in the world had to have a large position of dollars. Okay, crude is their number one ticket, right? Okay, about 4 or 5 months ago, Saudi Arabia chose not to re-up that agreement, and they joined the BRICS nations. Okay, the BRICS nations have now committed, they have 24 countries, and they're still adding on. They're committed to a domestic, a currency of their own, a basket of currencies of their own to trade domestically throughout the BRICS nations. They're making it very, Saudi Arabia is now accepting other currencies for the purchase of their crude. It is a systematic attack on the dollar because don't forget, countries don't need the dollar like they used to. And their number one ticket item per the GDP is the purchase of crude. Well, God, we can just purchase them with the yuan. We can purchase them with the whatever, loonie, whatever. So they don't need that many dollars. So they're not buying bonds. They're not buying treasuries. They're looking to get rid of them now because they're really not, even with the Trump presidency, they're not 100% convinced. Elon Musk came out with, I thought, a very mature view on what we have to look forward to. He said, until we learn to live within our means, we are in for economic hardship. And he said, we're going to go through a significant amount of hardship before we get to that place where we're living within our means and the dollar becomes as strong as it possibly can be. Otherwise, inspired much confidence worldwide.
In fact, I think we've done exactly the reverse for the last 4 years, definitely. And
right.
Okay, so the first 4 years of Trump, okay, they were good, but you had COVID in the middle where we printed a heckload of money, a huge amount of money. And so while things were good, we were still hitting the print button on the printing press. So really, as far as the global economy, we really didn't do ourselves any favors. And now we have the second Trump presidency, and if he follows through on and he's able to accomplish everything that he says, we'll be in a much better position. But from what I'm getting from this conversation, really nothing's changed, and you ought to treat the economy, well, the same way that you did 3 weeks ago.
Absolutely. And think about if even if he entertains a suggestion of deporting 10 million undocumented immigrants, the rise in food prices that would be necessarily promoted, the disruptions in those fields and those industries that would be affected, it would be. I mean, look, I'm no prophet or anything, but it's think about the supply chain problems we had during COVID. If these immigrants, these undocumented immigrants, are in a large way are controlling a lot of these, or in the control of a lot of these industries. It's not a healthy forecast. It's not an easy 1, 2, 3, get them out and fill them up with American workers. Do American workers want to do that kind of work? I don't know. We'll see. But listen, I want to get. There's one thing that your listeners should know and that you should know is that it's not an either or thing, gold or paper assets, and either gold is good or it's bad. Gold, since 2008, gold is a healthy part of everybody's portfolio, and everybody should own it. Listen, central banks are buying at an unprecedented manner. They purchased well over 1,000 tons over the past year. This is unprecedented. There's 3 other times this happened. Okay, 1933, central bank loaded up, and once they were finished loading up, they revaluated gold up 70%. 1971, we depegged the dollar from the gold standard. Central banks were loaded up again, and gold 24 times its value within 9 years. 2007 and 2008, central banks were buying again and loading up, and gold went from 500 to 1,900. And here we are. Over the past year, central banks have been quadrupling what they did back then. Okay. And there's a finite amount of it in the world. Okay. And I tell people, listen, even if you don't believe it, like that it's going to help you, even if you don't have enough money to really make a difference in your life, you need to buy it. Portable real estate, there's going to be a time, and I believe it's in the near term, where you're not going to be able to buy it. Banks are going to own it. This is very important. 2019, the Basel III Accords made gold a tier 1 asset class. Prior it had been tier 3, where it wasn't considered liquid, from the point of view of a bank. It's now tier 1. It's considered on par with cash. Banks have been given the license, if you will, to own it for capital requirements, outstanding requirements. This institutions, banks, central banks, they're buying it. They're going to hold on to it. They'll offer it to their clients. They'll say, "Hey, we have a great program going on. We have a gold program," and in the fine print, they'll say, "Never for delivery."
Mm-hmm.
J.P. Morgan's the largest holder of physical silver in history. Tell me why.
Well, I think that the reason why is they can read the economy just like anybody else can, and when you have the biggest country or the biggest economy in the world at over $35 trillion in debt, and still spending and still printing money, well, they're placing their bets on something that's a little bit more solid. So real quick, I've got just a couple of minutes, and I just want to remind my listeners that Freedom Gold USA has set up a special program just for Cowboy State Politics listeners. And if you go to the website, freedomgoldusa.com/David, fill out the little form, and that'll enter you in a drawing to win $250 worth of silver. And that's no purchase necessary. All you do is fill out the form, and what you'll get is a free consultation to find out where you're at, find out if gold and silver is right for you, and to just see if you'd be interested in buying it. And also, you can get it's really easy with Freedom Gold USA to be able to own precious metals as assets. And one of the reasons I chose to partner with you guys is, you're not like one of the big gold outfits, and you're really raking people over the coals to make money. I mean, there's an affordable way to get gold and silver, and I appreciate the way you guys do it.
Absolutely. We welcome anybody that calls in. Definitely, 888-305-8907, and just say that you listen to Dave Iverson.
Appreciate it, Paul.
You bet.
All right, take care, man. We'll talk again.
You too. Take care.
That'll do it for today's installment of the program. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk again on Saturday during Weekend Update. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics.